Hey everyone, Joey here, aka Animus, and remember how in my last video I nudge wink winked that I had a big project on its way? Well, that's very much coming, the main reason for my recent lack of output along with an inconvenient spell of illness. No, it wasn't COVID, and no, I don't think you can catch it through the screen. But first, it's time for another Patreon requested review, because today, at the behest of Roberto Diaz, I'm going to be reviewing the third EP from Rob Clouth, titled Hidden Structures. Rob Clouth is a Spanish producer in the fields of IDM and experimental electronic music, who I was familiar with prior to this request thanks to his 2020 full-length debut 0 Point, which I sat through after hearing a considerable amount of hype and was not disappointed by whatsoever. Its vast expanses of ever-evolving, microscopically detailed soundscapes, creatively fused with gorgeous classical elements, knocked my socks off enough to reach number 7 on my favourite albums of that year.
Link in the description if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that one.
However, I wasn't aware of any previous material of his, so while going into Hidden Structures retrospectively probably wasn't the best way to experience it, I was still excited to see the origins of Clouth's music and whether his early creations could have the same awe-inspiring effect on me. To gain some perspective, I did go back and listen to his first two EPs, 2012's Cloud Complex and 2014's Clockwork Atom, and while they're both well-produced slices of danceable, detailed IDM, I do feel that this third extended play is where he really started to come into his own, becoming not just cinematic, but prismatic, enigmatic, if not quite yet idiosyncratic. Wow, what a wordsmith! As opposed to 0 Point's hefty 64-minute runtime, Hidden Structures is a rather more digestible 30-minute experience split up into 4 quarters. And while it perhaps lacks some of the classical emphasis of his later work, instead sitting more in line with the music of some well-known IDM greats, in particular often seeming to combine influences from Autechre, John Hopkins, Aphex Twin, and the extremist production practices of BT, that's about where my criticisms end for this airtight half-hour brain fry, as surprisingly just 3 years into his career, his almost superhuman sonic wizardry has already cemented itself into his skillset. Shut up, train, I'm trying to talk. Hidden Structures is a record that feels just as visual as it is oral, fractals of brilliant light that expand, divide, shrink, and transform, mesmerizing, hypnotic, enveloping. It's music that creates a feeling of infinite depth, that what's immediately apparent to our ears is not all that we're presented with, that if you could somehow zoom in on the music, it would reveal more and more layers of geometry, more and more hidden structures. Track 1, The Smallest Measurable Space, begins with an amorphous cascade of sparse electronics, late-era Autechre style, before scattered and sporadic percussion slowly kicks into gear, along with polyrhythmic synth plucks which gradually grow in intensity over the course of the next few minutes. The track is then transformed into something more steady and danceable, while losing none of its intricate and chaotic texture, breaking down into a brutal bass groove before building up to a soaring climax towards the end of its whopping 10-minute runtime. This is a wonderful musical journey and a great way to open the record. However, believe it or not, this is not even a huge standout for me, nor the most musically complex and intriguing track in the bunch, as demonstrated by the utter stunner that follows, Cracks in the Firmament. This track materializes from a series of immense, slow-motion organ-like chords, forming a rhythm from what sounds like pieces of broken glass and debris strewn across the soundscape. At about the halfway point, this reaches a dizzying level of complexity that never sits still, hurtling at full throttle through its vast, fragmented environment, before becoming bathed in the warm golden glow of a gorgeous piano motif, and drawing to a close only after 7 glorious minutes of boundary-pushing sonic adventure. This probably has to be my favourite track in the bunch. Again, Rob Clouth is absolutely not the only artist capable of taking electronic music to this kind of level, But even for someone familiar with its history, this is pretty mind-blowing stuff, and only keeps getting better as I come back to it more. Thin Shell in a Void is largely a continuation of structures and sound palettes we've already heard, though contains a more steady and danceable underlying pulse, and introduces some BT-style stutter edits, which are, of course, right up my street. This is by no means, though, a step down in quality or effort, simply continuing the digital symphony. That's the thing, by the way, with a release that lasts for only 4 tracks and 30 minutes, you can really get away with sticking to one set of sounds and styles. In fact, in my opinion, it's kind of preferable to keep the EP feeling like a unified experience, which is precisely what Hidden Structures comes across as. Closing track The Galaxy Collapsed into a Point does differ from the other 3 in that it remains practically beatless throughout its runtime, but does so in a way that absolutely makes it feel like a perfect closing movement to the greater picture. After a minute of what appears to be pure white noise-like rainfall, we move into a section made up of glitching mechanical clanks that carry a dark and ominous atmosphere. However, moving into the stunning final few minutes of the EP, we break out of the gloomy tunnel into an indescribably vast expanse of brilliant light, overwhelming the listener in a prismatic explosion of rainbows and refractions, so larger than life and emotionally charged that it feels like the music and sensations of an entire lifetime of human experience crammed into a few fleeting moments. The galaxy collapsed into a point. And that concludes this release, which, the more I talk about it, the more I realize how much it gives me to say despite its brevity. Obviously, as previously mentioned, it's not like Rob Clouth is breaking entirely new musical ground with this EP, or anything like that. But it's rare to see an artist reach such a technically flawless level of production so early on in their career. Everything you can hear is crisp, punchy, dynamic, and microscopically detailed in a way that I feel I can never truly wrap my head around, therefore warranting repeated listens that blow my mind all over again. It's difficult, of course, to claim a record that zips in and out this quickly to be some kind of fully fleshed out masterpiece, and I do feel that Rob at this point was still building up to his 2020 opus that I continue to feel is his vision fully realised and built upon. But Hidden Structures is simply 4 tracks of top-tier stuff, and a smooth, complete half-hour experience that still holds its place in his catalogue alongside 0 Point. Therefore, do not compare this to my thoughts on that Buggles album, but I feel I can give this release no less than a strong 8 out of 10. So, looks like my followers really know what I'm into. Thank you again, Roberto Diaz, for introducing me to this one, and if you want to hear my thoughts on any album or EP, and I mean anything,
Link is in the description to my Patreon site where any support is massively appreciated.
Again, it's all been a bit slower here than I would have liked, given I have so much time on my hands, but there is a lot of exciting stuff gradually coming your way. For now, though, thank you for watching. See you next time.